Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to give it just a few seconds here for everyone to start joining, but we're really grateful for your time and welcome to Artificial Intelligence 101. We have just a few more folks joining with us today. Okay. I think we'll have some people filter in as we start, but I wanted to say welcome. Thank you for your time today. We have a really great program to talk about AI 101 and some of the basics that relate to artificial intelligence. And we're really grateful to have one of our speakers here with us today. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam Kohn to introduce himself.
Thank you, Whitney. Hello, everybody. Good morning to anyone in Pacific time zone, and good afternoon to those of you across and Alaska time zone, and good afternoon to those of you across the rest of the United States. It's a pleasure to join you virtually. My name is Samuel Kohn. I'm a member of the Crow Tribe of Montana. I'm a partner at the law firm of Kaplan Kirsch. My resident home office is in San Francisco, but I sit in Denver and Washington, D.C. as well. I served most recently as the senior counselor to the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs at the United States Department of the Interior, and really happy to be here today to talk with you about artificial intelligence. Whitney, I'll pass it back over to you.
Great. And then I'll introduce myself. My name is Whitney Sawney. I'm a citizen of Cherokee Nation, and I am the Director of Communications and Policy at the Native American Agriculture Fund. I've been with NAAF for about 4 years. We have a really awesome communications team, and we get to embrace some of the new AI tools. So I'm going to share more about some of the ways that we're using AI to leverage some of our work, but also some of the lessons learned. And I know some of you who are joining today may not be as familiar with NAAF, so I just wanted to give a really quick overview of who we are. So on the next slide, you'll see that we are the largest philanthropic organization that our main purpose is to advance agriculture in Indian country through grant making. We provide grants to 4 eligible entities, and those are nonprofits, tribes, CDFIs or community development institutions, financial institutions, and educational institutions for the purposes of supporting farmers for business assistance, agricultural education, technical support, and advocacy services. So if you have questions about the work that we do at NAAF, we would be happy to share some of our resources with you. But next, I'm going to go ahead and actually turn it over to Sam to get us started in discussing AI basics.
Sounds good. Thank you, Whitney. So I'll go ahead and dive in. Prepared a short PowerPoint slideshow. I'll apologize. You're given a lawyer a presentation assignment. You're probably going to get a PowerPoint in response. So beg your indulgence. Hopefully very understandable and accessible, and we'll also carve out some time for any questions that folks may have in the interim. There's also a question and answer function along the bottom of Zoom that I will do my best to monitor here with while I'm making this presentation. Please feel free to raise any questions that you might have as you think of them, and I'll again do my best to answer those as they come up. So let's go ahead and jump in. If we could move to the first slide, please. So artificial intelligence refers to a computer system that will perform a task that typically is associated with human judgment. So these will be things like recognizing language or finding a pattern or making a prediction. It's different from traditional software like your word processor or your PowerPoint app because it follows rules that are written by because it learns patterns from data instead of following rules that are written by a developer. That means instead of us saying to the computer, if you click here and type a word, show the word on the screen, we instead show the artificial intelligence engine thousands or millions of examples until it's able to make generalizations and understand exactly how those things will work. We've all had some interaction with artificial intelligence. If you've used Google Translate or Siri or Netflix recommendations or autocorrect on your phone, then you've used artificial intelligence in some way. It's embedded in a lot of tools that we interact with on our day-to-day lives, and it's really in a lot of things that we don't think of as an artificial intelligence or AI product at this point. It's also really important to understand what AI is not. So artificial intelligence is not able to think or understand or have intentions on its own. It's really a prediction tool. So what it has done is it's reviewed all sorts of information and it's making a prediction based on the patterns that it identifies in the data it was trained on. Artificial intelligence is not reasoning the way that people do. So because artificial intelligence is really good at recognizing patterns, the quality and type of data that artificial intelligence is trained upon really matters. That means that good data leads to good results, and correspondingly bad data leads to bad results, whether they're inaccurate or biased. And I'll come back to those risks in just a few minutes. Could we jump to the next slide, please? So again, just to talk a little bit about how AI works, the core principle here is that companies that develop artificial intelligence don't sit down and program in tons and tons of rules. Instead, artificial intelligence reviews example after example and then learns to predict patterns on its own, right? So easiest way to think about this is teaching through exposure rather than instruction. An analogy was really helpful for me in understanding how this works. If you were to show somebody who had never seen a cat or a dog before enough pictures of cats and dogs, eventually they would be able to tell the difference without you being able to explain every detail. And AI works in sort of the same way. You're just learning by sheer volume of material that's reviewed. Artificial intelligence, again, is not it does not have the capability to reason. Instead, it's just issuing a prediction. So systems like ChatGPT or image generators are really advanced prediction tools. They predict what your next word will be in the sentence, what the next phrase will be in the paragraph you're writing, the next pixel, the smallest piece of a picture on a computer, or the most likely label that could be applied to a piece of data. When the system is doing that, artificial intelligence still doesn't have the capacity to understand meaning or context the way that people do. So it has no awareness of intention or probably not even comprehension at this point. It's just looking at statistical relationships between data. So again, this means that the type of data that the artificial intelligence engine is reviewing matters enormously. And it also means that at this point, as in the world we're in today, human oversight is really essential. Artificial intelligence is powerful, but it is also regularly incorrect. And when it gives you incorrect results, it is unfortunately very confident when it gives you those sort of incorrect results. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide and talk a little bit about the most common artificial intelligence system. That is called generative artificial intelligence. We use that term to refer to systems that create new content. So that could be text in a system like ChatGPT, or images in a system like DALL-E. There's also platforms out there that do this for audio or video and even computer code to write new programs. Those systems are not creating from scratch. Like the like I described, explaining how artificial intelligence works, they are just predicting patterns based on what they've learned. That means when ChatGPT writes you a paragraph, it's writing that paragraph by choosing the statistically most likely next word based on the patterns that ChatGPT sees from its training data. We call that type of model a large language model. It's the sort of more technical term used for generative artificial intelligence that focuses on text. Again, it learns to generate text by seeing the relationships that form or are evident across billions or trillions of sentences, not by understanding meaning of those sentences the way that people do, right? So for example, if it was to read billions of times, "Hi, my name is Sam," it would begin to understand that the pattern goes, "Hi, my name is Sam," and it would see this suggests perhaps that many people's name is the same. That same mechanism is the way that audio and image generators work as well, but they do that by using patterns in visual generation or in audio generation. So while it's really cool what DALL-E or audio creation can do, really at the programming level, they work in a very similar way. Part of the reason that we wanted to present this to you all today is because generative AI is becoming a really practical tool to have in the toolkit, no matter what field you work in. That is because generative AI creates new content for you. So it can be really helpful, but it is also capable of mistakes and pretty significant mistakes, as I'll come back to. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide and talk quickly about training data and machine learning in a little more detail. So machine learning works by absorbing a large number of examples. And this is really important for Indian tribes or individual tribal members because anything that's publicly available, whether that's a language recording in your traditional language or historic documents or descriptions of ceremony, those types of written materials or publicly available materials can become examples that an artificial intelligence system learns from, whether or not the tribe or the individual has granted permission, right? Machine learning doesn't have the ability to distinguish between ordinary data or culturally sensitive data. And when systems analyze those sorts of large data sets, they adjust patterns based on statistical relationships, right? They look for the word that is most common to follow another word, and they do not account for cultural meaning or significance or governance protocols. That means that AI is still unable to understand indigenous context or responsibilities or any sort of cultural restriction that might exist for a certain subcategory of data. This also means that everything that's out there, right? Pictures, text, audio, recordings, archival stories, GIS data, online cultural content, that's all material that can be absorbed into an artificial intelligence model. And the breadth of that data, the breadth of the sort of sweeping into the model that happens for artificial intelligence to learn poses some risks to privacy at the individual level and sovereignty at the tribal level. At its most accessible level, I think it means that for artificial intelligence to behave fairly and equitably towards Indian tribes, the data that the artificial intelligence learns from has to be high quality and has to be culturally appropriate and accurate. And unfortunately, that's not been the case thus far. More often than not, AI is learning from every corner of the internet. That is a poor or biased subset of data for Indian tribes, as we all know. And that means that AI is often learning about data that misrepresents tribes or repeats stereotypes or produces distorted information about ceremony or history or identities. And so we'll come back to this in a minute because the risk of these sorts of misunderstood or misattributed data is fairly significant. But this also shows why data sovereignty is really important for Indian tribes. There needs to be a lot of thought and intention given at the tribal level, as well as at the individual tribal member level, to how your data is collected and used and stored and represented in AI that has access to that data. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. With that background about how machine learning and training works, want to just talk through some of the opportunities and benefits of artificial intelligence. No question that one of the biggest benefits is you are very able to reduce the amount of time you spend on repetitive work very effectively. Drafting routine emails, summarizing long documents, organizing information. These are things that artificial intelligence is really good at helping with. It can also enhance your productivity, right? It can help you create a first draft more quickly, can help you generate a summary of a ton of documents that would save you hours of review. It really is a great tool to synthesize large amounts of data. It can also help support decision making by noticing patterns that people might have missed, trend detections or risk flags or anomalies, right? Something that's not supposed to be there. Those are places where artificial intelligence can help you see helpful signals, but ultimately not replace your judgment. It also expands your access to expertise. As a non-specialist, you're often able to get a quick explanation or example or help understanding a particular complex task that you may not have had exposure to before you started chatting with artificial intelligence about it. In the same way, it can support creativity and brainstorming by helping you to explore options more quickly, whether that's generating new ideas or outlines or scenarios that may arise. And perhaps most importantly, it is widely accessible, right? So whether you're dealing with real-time translation with somebody in another country whose language you don't speak, or closed captioning or assistive writing tools, artificial intelligence is just really empowering to individuals as you're thinking about ways that you would engage with it. Now, all of these benefits have to be paired with good oversight. So let's go ahead and jump to the next slide and talk about some of the risks. So because artificial intelligence systems process or generate information based on all of the data that they see, and that includes some sensitive data, privacy is a major concern when you're dealing with artificial intelligence, right? Sometimes our AI will reveal more than is intended or have access to more than is intended. And that means one of the biggest risks is accidentally using private or confidential information in a public AI tool, right? So if you go to chatgpt.com and you're putting in proprietary information from your company or your business, that information is no longer under your control. And so it's important to pay attention to artificial intelligence systems that explain to you that they will retain the prompts that you put in, the text that you put in to learn about how you want your future responses to look. That means on the back end, this artificial intelligence tool is saving everything that you give to it. If you're within a particular organization, you also need to be sure whether your organization is using business level enterprise protected tools or just the open consumer variations of these artificial intelligence tools. You also need to know that AI is sometimes generating outputs that reflect sensitive patterns in the data that it learned from. That doesn't mean that it's going to tell you the specifics of, this individual's medical records or this particular individual's historic narrative, but it will share generalizations based on the data that it has learned from. Those privacy risks also include metadata that it learns from, right? So anytime you create a file, whether that's a Word document or you take a picture with your phone or anything like that, and then you upload it to oh, I'm sorry, I'm just noticing the questions. Elizabeth, you asked if I used artificial intelligence to create this presentation. I did use AI to create some of these images. The text is built from a prior presentation I've given in the past. So if you think it's really smooth, then I guess I'm doing an okay job. Dylan and Dana, I believe the presentation is being recorded, but I'll ask Whitney to correct me if I'm mistaken on that point.
It is
Also,
being recorded, yes.
okay, great, thank you. I'll also just say that that metadata that is stored in your pictures or documents will also be uploaded, right, to any artificial intelligence tool that you're using. So you have to be very thoughtful about the not only the privacy of the content that you've created, but the context, right? You take a picture, there is location data often attached to where you've taken that picture, and that would be accessible to an artificial intelligence tool. While it's hard to account for what other people do, there are security risks that come from poorly controlled interactions with artificial intelligence. So if your first move anytime you have a question is to take it to ChatGPT, ChatGPT is often going to learn a lot about what you are doing in your day-to-day life. And most people are not cognizant of just how much ChatGPT can tell you about yourself based on the questions you might ask. Those sort of risks make it very clear that organizations need to create policies and guidance for their employees about data handling and engagement with artificial intelligence. And just to sort of underscore, most important thing as a risk advisor coming into this conversation, artificial intelligence is really just evolving the conversation about our responsibility to take care with privacy and security. It's not changing this paradigm. It's not making it a completely new paradigm. It's just adding new layers to problems that have been around for a while. So all of that said, I'm going to jump in next to two hypotheticals and then talk through some best practices. So the first hypothetical here, and Elizabeth, let me offer a disclosure. This was generated using artificial intelligence. This hypothetical is meant to illustrate how easily cultural data can be misused once it's publicly available online. So this image drew its data from university researchers who posted tribal oral history, ceremonial description, genealogical information on public websites. OpenAI, an artificial intelligence company, later scraped those sources to train a cultural heritage analysis model. That model incorporated the tribe's cultural knowledge without its permission, without understanding the significance of that model. And the model didn't just reproduce the material that was in the data set that it learned from. It tried to build patterns from that data set. And so what happened is the artificial intelligence went ahead and created and misstated facts about the historic record, about this tribe's history and origin story, and created new words in the tribal language to share that facts that quite simply never occurred. And if you were to read this material from the OpenAI system, you would learn that not only has the system presented this with tremendous confidence, but it is in fact pretty defensive about how accurate it is when questioned about whether it's accurate or not. And so the example is meant to just underscore why it's so important for folks to be very clear and intentional about what is happening to the data that they share publicly, especially when that's cultural data, and whether they have consent to share that data. And remember, when you're talking about data that's culturally significant, you need not only consent from the tribe, but also from the individual knowledge holder who has an interest in that data and what happens to it. The image that you see here was generated also using artificial intelligence. Sora, which is an OpenAI tool, was asked for a Native American design. And for anybody who's spent time in the Southwest, I'm not a member of a Pueblo, but to a non-Pueblo observer, it would be very easy to mistake this for a Pueblo design. So all this stuff is out there and is informing what artificial intelligence thinks of Indian tribes. Next, let me go ahead and I'm actually going to ask if we could skip the next slide and jump straight into the best practices to reduce legal risk here. The best practices to reduce legal risk. So this is sort of the most legal sounding piece of this discussion. There are some important actions that anyone who wants to manage their risk can undertake. So the first is do a checkup of your data that's online, right? Make sure that you feel good about the amount you're sharing and that you have not put anything out there that you don't want to be learned from by an artificial intelligence model. The next thing is to make sure, if you're a business or a company operating in this space, that you are keeping track of the policies that your company implements regarding to data storage and security of data storage, so that when artificial intelligence is combing the web for publicly available information, that your data is protected at the level that you want it to be. That can include implementing access control and user control, right? Making sure that only the people you want to have access to that information, in fact, have access to it. The next thing to be very thoughtful of is due diligence when you're engaging with artificial intelligence. So whether you are using chatgpt.com, just the publicly accessible websites, or engaged with a contractor who uses artificial intelligence, you need to be sure that you identify the sources that are involved in that artificial intelligence and evaluate the input data. So if you're building work product that relies upon a data set, you want to make sure that the data set is actually relevant to what you're trying to develop with it. Case in point, you don't want to develop a narrative for a grant application for a tribal endeavor by relying on a data set that builds from only grant applications for higher education institutions or something like that. There will just be a significant mismatch in what is produced versus what you're asking for. You'll also want to, again, speaking for businesses, you want to make sure that you have a trust and safety program so that your employees understand legal implications, ethical implications of use of artificial intelligence, and more importantly, how to be responsible as they're engaged with artificial intelligence. Next, just highlight, you want to keep your eyes open for algorithmic discrimination anytime artificial intelligence appears. Again, talking about scenarios where AI is trained by looking at a bunch of non-tribal data. When you ask questions about Indian tribes, it's more than likely that you will get back from the AI's algorithm data that reinforces socioeconomic divisions or exposes disparities and doesn't cast Indian tribes or tribal interests in the best light. And it's really important that you are mindful that the data that comes out is not perfect in its first use instance. We also recommend you explore licensing for artificial intelligence if you are a company. Businesses are doing this increasingly in Indian country, and there is a use case for tribal gaming operations where artificial intelligence is able to provide revenue forecasting and recommendations about which slot machines will be most effective. Next, would highlight again for any Indian tribes who are listening in today that there are a handful of existing protections out there that are not a perfect fit for artificial intelligence, but are definitely better than nothing, right? So you can take a look at Section 304 of the National Historic Preservation Act. That provides a framework to protect confidentiality, and tribes have noted in the past that more guidance is needed about Section 304. But it is something, it's a statutory point that tribes can argue and advocate for more protection for confidentiality. Also worth noting at that point to talk about the Freedom of Information Act and FOIA. Anytime information is shared with from an Indian tribe with the federal government, that material would be subject to the Freedom of Information Act. Anytime a FOIA request is made, most government agencies publish the results of that FOIA request in a publicly available website. And so the chain of events is that if a tribe submits something to the government, there is some scenario where that information could become publicly available and could be scraped by an artificial intelligence tool to learn from in the future. So, there's just a lot of thought process about what you share that needs to happen. Next, I would note that data sharing agreements, anytime you are transmitting amounts of data or important data to another entity, are really important. Define what your business partner, your contracting partner can do with that data and what they have to alert you about if they undertake it. So, we recommend for folks who are very cognizant of not wanting to share artificial information with artificial intelligence engines that be included in a data sharing agreement. Finally, just a note about vendors. There are some vendors out there now who are using artificial intelligence to perform many of the tasks that you hire them for. Of course, this tool increases productivity, not a bad thing to do necessarily, but if this is something that you as a consumer of those services do not want to happen, make sure that your agreements with those vendors include provisions requiring them to disclose what they have used artificial intelligence to help create. Just sort of the best tool to ensure transparency and honesty in the ways you want. So let's go ahead, jump to the next slide, and know I'm running up on time here, Whitney, so I'll hustle through and turn it over to you. So, closing takeaways for everybody. Artificial intelligence is helpful and provides really great opportunities for end users, but it's really important that we understand how it works and where it can go wrong. That means that oversight by real people is really the most important piece of artificial intelligence use in our day-to-day lives right now. We can't put something into ChatGPT, take it as it's spat out, and assume that it's perfect. That sort of responsible artificial intelligence use is a matter of informing your priorities as an individual and your organizational culture as an entity. It's not just a technical issue. It's a pretty tough one to solve as a matter of systems level processes. This is something that requires individual level buy-in and understanding. That said, artificial intelligence really improves productivity and creativity, right? This is sort of a fundamental shift in the world we live in and the tools available to everybody who's doing work. And that means for each of us, the goal is not to become a technical expert about artificial intelligence, just to be aware of its presence and to make sure that we're asking questions about how we engage with it. I hope this has been helpful in helping you to understand how AI can be a partner in the work that you're doing, and also, equipping you to ask a couple of questions about it if and when the time is right. So with that, Whitney, I'm happy to answer any questions that come up in the chat, but otherwise we'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam. And I think we may have some time towards the end to circle back to some other points that we may have skipped over, but we do have some questions coming in. Please submit your questions. You can do so via the chat function or a question and answer box in Zoom. I see one really great question coming in. We'll circle back to that. I'm going to run through a couple of slides here. I'm already even just learned from Sam, and I've been messaging our team about some takeaways and things that we can really think about when we're implementing some of our AI tools. So for my portion of the presentation, I wanted to focus on examples of how you can use AI and how you can leverage those tools for things like productivity, for your work, but also for your everyday life. So I also want to present some considerations when you're choosing the right tools, what to watch out for, with some examples of how our philanthropic organization is embracing AI tools. And I'm likely going to reiterate some points that Sam has touched on, but just shows how important some of those pieces are when it comes to understanding the pitfalls that relate to AI. I'm going to first introduce you to some of those AI applications that are most commonly used, go through some example ideas of how AI tools can provide, opportunities through grant writing and grant making, go through a checklist of things to consider when you're adopting AI responsibly to align with your goals, and then provide insight on some of the lessons learned and considered relating to AI pitfalls. So first up, when we think of AI, we maybe think first of a chatbot. But AI, as Sam had mentioned, now touches almost every tool that we already use. It could be an email, spreadsheets, our search engines like Google, predictive texting. For an example, our phone uses that machine learning to recognize patterns in language. Siri can use automatic speech recognition, natural language processing, generative AI, so it's listening, understanding, and responding. But the real value comes from whenever you can understand which type of AI you're using, how it works, and then how to connect those tools with your goals. So really the question is how to incorporate these tools carefully, but also meaningfully. Some examples of common AI tools and how people are leveraging them. One you've most likely heard of already is ChatGPT or other large language model chatbots. They can help with the things like draft writing, brainstorming, summarizing your meeting notes, generating ideas, and even could help with grant proposal outlines. You could use them to help support listening session transcripts into action items, brainstorm new ideas for your program that you're implementing, taglines or names of events, names for grant applications, translate really technical language into plain language for all audiences, Even just this morning, I'm not a web developer, and I was utilizing a large language model chatbot to really understand some technical web development language. Um, you could use it to think about frequently asked questions for training scripts or workshops or educational materials. A rancher might be able to use ChatGPT for things like a product description for beef that emphasizes regenerative grazing practices. At NAAF, we've even begun implementing an AI chatbot interface on our website. So folks can go on, they can ask questions about our application process, ask questions about deadlines, eligibility. But that chatbot on the website uses that natural language processing to then direct users to the correct web page or resources. And it lets our staff spend less time answering some of those repetitive inquiries and freeing up time for other work. The design software that I use for this slide deck today, it's called Canva. It's a design platform, but it's increasingly offering these AI generative features to be more user-friendly to the non-designer. So for example, our communications team uses it for presentations, social media graphics, to quickly adopt materials into different formats. So whether that be like a newsletter, or different publications or printable flyers. I've known business owners who use it for creating logos, product design, marketing materials. Canva uses AI to ultimately generate those visual concepts and layouts using that natural language prompt. It's not the only design tool out there that's incorporating AI. Tools like Photoshop are also using it, but I like to use the example of Canva first and foremost because they provide a discount to nonprofits, but also I think it's more accessible and user friendly for everyone. So if you're a non-designer, this is a really helpful tool. Grammarly is one that we utilize within our organization. It's a language enhancement tool. It's not just a grammar and spell check. It can offer things like tone and clarity suggestions. You could use it for grant proposals and website copy to ensure that your tone and language is consistent across all of your materials to help you catch errors before finalizing it on the website or publishing something, or maybe putting something on social media. Other examples I see even some folks today are utilizing are transcription tools. So speech to text or that automatic speech recognition, converting recorded speech into text format. So it's helpful for transcribing meetings. Always disclose if you're using it to ask permission beforehand, just to make sure you have approval. But also you can transcribe interviews. You could do community listening sessions and turn those into written notes. A producer could record notes on their phone about planting conditions when out in the field. AI can then transcribe that into text that can be added into their log to reference at a later point. So those tools are Otter.ai, Fireflies, Zoom even now has an AI companion. There's endless tools out there right now. Microsoft has Copilot, Google has Gemini. These are some of the generative writing and productivity assistants. Within NAAF, we utilize a natural language processing AI tool called Claude, Claude. Excel has a Copilot for different data analysis and visualization. But ultimately, understanding what type of function each AI tool offers can help you then narrow down what will be helpful and best for your intended outcomes. So on the next slide, we're going to think about AI and grant writing. You should use AI to enhance your writing for clarity, consistency, but also data analysis, storytelling, but never really to write the grant for you. You don't want to sacrifice your authenticity or your accuracy or your experience in the field and understanding the landscape of agriculture. You want to use it for things like outlining, to generate that outline, and then you review that outline that's produced by AI to then adjust to meet your funder's requirements. You can use it to refine your language, refine your notes, your impact data, different quotes. I just encourage you, do not put any confidential data or personal identifiers into this large language tool that you're using. You could use it for editing. Ask AI to flag passive voice or jargon, but the human voice should still be at the center of your proposal because grant reviewers can pick up on generic language because it does become repetitive. When you're reviewing multiple applications, you start to notice similar language. And so when you're writing a grant, you want to propose unique solutions to address the need for the grant funding you're applying for. Another example for agriculture, AI and ag is a completely different discussion topic. I think there's some really incredible advanced tools out there for production use. But for our concept today, I wanted to use the example of a farmer who is exploring maybe new crops for the next season or crop planning. So trying to decide whether or not they want to expand into value-added products. So they could use AI as a decision tool to help them gain insight. They could use it for data analysis. They could upload last year's crop yields, different market notes, and turn that into a spreadsheet. And then ask AI which crops had the highest profit margin. They could use it for scenario planning, thinking if I do X, Y, and Z, what impact could that have on my production or on my revenue? They could use it for research. Ask what are some of the emerging trends in the market for different value-added products. Um, Help research different grant programs or trainings, educational materials that would help small producers really expand into that value-added processing. So on the next slide, you'll see how we get the most out of some of these AI tools. So some of my recommendations, start small. It's an overwhelming landscape at first glance, but think about what your goals are. There's likely an AI tool out there that's going to help you accomplish your goal. You want to integrate your AI tools thoughtfully. So each tool that you use plays a role. Think of it this way. So if you're starting a new business or you're planning an event, using the example tools that we discussed, Canva can help you show through design. Grammarly can help you say it clearly and communicate to all audiences. And then ChatGPT can help you think through ideas and brainstorm. So each tool has a different job, but you want to keep in mind how they all work together as an ecosystem. And then another tip that I have is keep the human in the loop because there's human judgment, gut instinct, intuition, experience. Those are all hard things to replicate. And we don't always make our decisions based on data. Sometimes in our day-to-day and personal lives, we make them based on a gut feeling. And AI should be thought of as a co-pilot. So that's why there's a Microsoft tool named Copilot. You always want to ground your AI output of AI generated content with your own analysis. As a producer, no one knows the land better than you. As Indigenous people, we are the stewards of our cultures and traditions. So lead with human. And then track your metrics. How much time are you actually saving? What are some of the improvements? Over time, you can build a case for further investment down the line. So, for example, at NAAF, implementing an AI chatbot tool, we have our own guidelines and policies and compliance requirements, and we're testing the tool within our own defined parameters of confidentiality, security, and responsibility to ensure that we're meeting the goals of our organization. Some potential benefits of implementation and what AI can help you accomplish. Sam has brought up some really great points about productivity. In Indian country, we know that capacity and time are valuable resources. A lot of us are wearing many hats at once, but AI tools can allow you to focus on the work that requires more of your time and expertise. It could also be cost efficient. It could cut back on the need for those outside contractors, different manual processes that can help you automate more common tasks. Another benefit is that most AI tools are free, and if not, they can be very affordable. As a side note, however, I do want to note that if you are looking to implement AI as a part of your tribal organization, you want to invest in security measures. That's key. You want to look at what comes with the enterprise level AI packages and tools. And I'll briefly touch on that in a moment. But another benefit is enhanced creativity, as Sam mentioned, problem solving. It could help you brainstorm those ideas, organize project plans, design outreach materials, visualize data in new ways, ultimately helping you with better analysis for data. But we're really just breaching the surface when we're talking about AI. currently focusing on productivity, getting more done faster. But that's really just a small part of the equation. So AI tools um, will be able to help solve problems that we previously thought were not possible. There might be a time when we can model long-term land use or food sovereignty scenarios, identifying which grant programs have the highest community return on investment using different data pattern analysis. But what's most important is that you use AI responsibly. On the next slide, you'll see things to consider when implementing your AI tools. So note that this is just surface level one-on-one, but I did want to share some learned lessons and provide examples of how we're implementing AI and establishing those guardrails. So some initial considerations is to define what kind of data can be input into the AI tools. So for example, no highly confidential or personally identifiable examples. Like don't put protected research data into your AI chatbot. Um, Always verify and cross-check. AI outputs can contain errors, biases, outdated information, as you've heard. Those AI tools can process data in the cloud, so clarify how long that data is stored, who has access to it. Can they use your data to do testing? What are the security measures? Does it complement your already existing internal IT infrastructure? You also want to create protocols. If there's a data breach, have a plan in place. Who do you notify? How do you remediate the issue? And how do you prevent that from happening in the future? I also think an important piece is to provide training to your staff so that they can understand how to use AI, but also how not to use AI. Here are some helpful questions I think that would be good to ask yourself. Does your organization have an AI use policy? Have you identified which AI tools are authorized for your staff to use and what kinds of tasks are suitable for AI use and which are not? Have you defined what prohibited data is? So what kind of information should you not be putting into the AI system? Do you have a review process for the content that is AI generated? Who is the lead person to review that content? Are you tracking the tool usage, the outcomes and metrics, both positive and negative? How are you training your staff, and who is the point person on training staff? Sam had mentioned what's the risk, and for each AI tool, what's the data policy? Are you monitoring the usage and outcomes? Do you have an audit procedure? How is the tool used, and what data was input? On the next slide, I'm going to go over some pitfalls to consider. Over-reliance on AI. My rule of thumb is to use it to enhance, not replace. If the data that you're putting into the AI tool is poor quality, or if it's biased, the output could be weak or misleading. Um, Always think about confidentiality risk. If there's data leakage, you don't want to upload proprietary data or sensitive information. Again, reiterating the point about bias issues. AI can amplify bias. Inadequate training can lead to a poor understanding and may lead to a misuse or distrust of AI tools within your organization. And then another pitfall could be chaotic implementation into your organizational structure or aligning with your organization's goals. So don't do it haphazardly. Learn and experiment first. Plan ahead. There will be flaws at first. AI has to learn over time, but also you have to learn in your process. So be patient with that. And a couple of closing thoughts, and I think we'll turn it over to questions, is don't wait and see when it comes to AI. Instead, learn and plan. Be proactive rather than reactive. It's good that you're here joining us today to learn initially about some of the basic concepts of AI. And at NAAF and our ecosystem, we're a mission-driven organization. We have a trust agreement that governs our work to advance agriculture in Indian country. But we need to adopt AI in a way that amplifies tribal sovereignty, it enhances the producer voice and perspective, and it doesn't undermine cultural values. We always want to make sure that we're considering what those points are when we're talking about and using AI. So I encourage you to do the same. Um, so I do see some questions coming in, and I want to be able to answer some of those. Um, Sam, I'm going to ask you the first question. It's a really great one coming in from Elizabeth about how law firms are using AI tools to summarize large amounts of data. In this use, is it a helpful tool? Does AI miss things? And can you share any anecdotal examples?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So, I guess let me start with a recent model rule that has come out about using artificial intelligence in the practice of law. There's sort of a number of cases right now where somebody decides they will go to court and represent themselves using ChatGPT to help them write their brief and guide them on the legal process. And then you also have lawyers who will put stuff into ChatGPT and sort of copy and paste what ChatGPT spits out without checking that things in it are accurate. Um, that has been an unmitigated disaster across the board. Courts are stretched really thin. So when you have artificial intelligence putting forth data that's inaccurate, it sort of makes judges who are, I would say more often than not, a little cranky because they have so much to do and so little time. It really makes them even more cranky. And so lawyers have gotten in a lot of trouble for poor use of artificial intelligence, and people who represent themselves in court have gotten in some trouble for using artificial intelligence to move those cases forward. That process resulted in this model rule that requires lawyers to disclose, if asked, about how much artificial intelligence is being used in their practice of law. That includes document review and sort of document collection and management. Um, I have not actually had firsthand experience using these tools as of yet. I used to be a litigator who did this kind of work regularly. Since I came out of government service, I've not had occasion to do that sort of work, but I am aware from a couple of my colleagues that these sorts of tools have been helpful. When there is a strategy in some corners of judicial practice, or I'm sorry, in legal practice, where the strategy is just to produce a ton of documents, way more than would be needed for that case in order to sort of drown the other side in paper, right? And artificial intelligence makes that strategy, I'm given to understand, not effective any longer. Artificial intelligence is really good at finding patterns to help identify what's relevant and what's not in terms of critical thinking to figure out how that fits into strategy. Not so great. So in terms of does it miss things, I'm afraid I couldn't tell you. I haven't had the firsthand experience. Anecdotally, I will share that artificial intelligence resulted in some cost savings for clients. So
All right, we did have one more question come in. A great question from Lucas. So, when it comes to available AI tools and companies, which allow your data to be owned by your organization and not used by the AI vendor to train their models? A great question. Another consideration point that we've looked at NAAF. Sam, do you have any comments that speak to this question?
yeah, thank you for the question. I apologize. We're out of school today, and so I just had to narrowly avoid a break-in during the presentation. So please excuse me for going off camera for a second there. Lucas, great question. The So I would say there's two pieces to the answer. Part one is that um, most companies with whom a business negotiates to license artificial intelligence will have some piece of the contract that talks about who owns the data, where the data is stored, how that data will be used. Some of the really big companies like OpenAI have no space for the negotiation about those terms. They give you their standard contract and it's take it or leave it. Um, That's my experience on behalf of a couple of clients. There are, I understand, and I've not had personal experience in this realm, other AI tools, some from very well-recognized companies that allow ownership of data and use of data for training to be completely restricted by the terms of the contract. And those are IBM's Watson X tool, allows really nuanced end user controls, but also has a much, again, through word of mouth, a much more open approach to uh, restricting restricting data that's entered by the end user from training or storage outside of the end user's facility. Uh, there is another startup called DeepSet. They have an AI tool called Haystack. They provide an ability to host your data on their end in the cloud or to host the data on site, which is fairly unique amongst artificial intelligence tools. Again, startups, so take it with a grain of salt, and you know whether they'll be around a decade from now is an open question for any startup. But um, I also understand Adobe, the creator of Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe Acrobat, PDF tool, for their AI software and sort of public-facing commitments. They've made a pledge not to use any data that they have from customers to train their generative models. Um, Not in the contract, not, you know, this is just a promise to consumers, but it's not a legally enforceable contract to have. So those are the ones that I'm aware of off the top of my head. I can almost guarantee there are more experiences out there. That's just what I have to share off the cuff.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And I think we have a similar question, but I want to make sure we're not missing any points specific to this question, which this question is about an organization that signed on to the business version of ChatGPT. And they were told by their IT team that because they were using this version, that it doesn't use what they upload for the learning model. So how can they be certain that the upload isn't out there in the public realm? Again, this is, I think, similar to the question about data ownership. And then can they upload the file and really trust that it's confidential? They just want to be sure that they're considering all privacy issues.
Yeah, that's a great question again. I think it's one of those situations where you just kind of have to trust the company, right? If this is in the contract and the contract says that the data will not be used, then as a matter of law, you know, as a matter of your rights by contract, you would expect that that data not be used. If you are able to find an instance where your data is being used, or if you go to the public-facing website and ask a question about the data that you've put in and it seems to know something, then maybe you've got a real question to ask ChatGPT about how your data is being used. But I think as a lawyer, my advice would be, you know, when you have a contract that protects your interests in a certain way, we kind of have to presume that people are good actors and will follow the terms they've agreed to. And you know, unless and until you have a reason to suspect otherwise, probably good to presume the best.
Awesome. And I wanted to give another quick note. You've seen in the chat that we have shared a term sheet developed here by Sam. It's AI 101 terms, good things to know when learning the AI landscape when you're just starting. We will also be sure to share out this slide deck following this webinar along with this recording. So you can reference it at a later point, but also we'll include this term sheet. There's two slides here, I think, but it's condensed into one page in the link that we shared. But just some example terminology like bias and you know, APIs. What does that mean? How does it interact with other applications like the websites, ethics and governance, and understanding some of those pieces. So hopefully that's a helpful resource. And we're going to be here to answer questions, I think, with our email addresses. And I know we're getting close to time. So, Sam, any more closing final thoughts for today?
No, I'll just say thank you to NAAF for the invitation. I hope this has been a little helpful or thought-provoking for anyone who's listening in. And please, feel free to reach out to me or to your whomever you have as your legal advisor if you have questions about these sorts of things. I would just say this is such a rapidly evolving area of law that certainty is at a premium, but a little bit of risk prevention can go a long way. Much harder to try and put toothpaste back in the tube if you were to have like some proprietary or confidential or culturally significant data leak out that you don't want to be out there. Much more important, much more effective to prevent it from going out in the first place. So happy to have one-on-one conversations as would be helpful. And thank you again to NAAF for the invitation.
Wonderful. And I think that's a great way to close out our webinar. Thank you again for your time and being here today. Please let us know if you have questions, but we do appreciate your time. Thank you.